Just look at your experience. And you know what brings you the biggest pain. When people are mean to you, when people cheat you, when those people you thought loved you turn their backs on you. That really, really hurts. Why is that? Because relationships are far more important than money. Now, is money important? Yes. Is it a gift from God? Yes, ma'am. But to make it the most important thing in your life, please don't do that. It'll leave you decimated. So, these are all good. Money, sex, career, family, cars, homes to live in, all good. But remember, they're gifts from God. Don't worship the gift, worship the giver.
I just want to know, when Jesus died on the cross and went to hell and such, for how long was he suffering?
I do not know.
Okay. So then, another question. When people die and they don't die, they don't die having been, like living in accordance with God and accepting Jesus as their Savior and all that good stuff, right?
Right.
They go to hell forever, right?
No.
Why not? For how long do they stay in hell then?
Well, when a person dies, the hard question biblically is, what state are they in? And because Jesus and other parts of the New Testament talk about death as being sleep, some followers of Christ view death as soul sleep. In other words, waiting till Christ returns a second time, where there'll be a resurrection, and then there'll be a day of judgment. Myself, because of Philippians chapter 1, where Paul writes, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain," I understand that when a follower of Christ dies, their soul, their personhood, goes into the presence of Christ. Exactly what happens to an atheist or an agnostic or someone who rejects Christ, I really don't know. The Bible doesn't really clarify, but what it does say is that when Christ returns a second time, we will all be raised to life. We will have to give an answer to God for the lives that we've lived, and then there will be a separation, heaven and hell. Does that make any sense?
Okay. So then, what exactly then happens to... I'm sorry if I'm just rehashing the original question from before, but then what exactly did Jesus accomplish when he died and did whatever it is that happened in those 2 days?
What did he? That's a great question. Thank you, sir, for raising it. He hauls back and smacks you. I look him in the face and say, "I forgive you." What? Cliff, he didn't do anything against you. Cliff, do you think you can forgive him for hitting you? That's absurd. When he hits you, you have to make a decision. Am I going to forgive him or not? And he needs to ask you for forgiveness. But according to Christ, not only does he have to ask you for forgiveness, he has to ask God for forgiveness. Because God created you with value, God created him for a purpose, and that purpose is not for him to haul back and smack you. So when Christ died on the cross, he's offering forgiveness to us all. Why? Because he's God in human form. Because he laid his life down on the cross to pay the penalty for human sin. He's not just him saying, "Oh, I will forgive Son of Sam for murdering so many people in New York City." What? It doesn't matter. It's the people who he murdered who have to choose to forgive him or not. It's God who has to forgive him or not. So you see, the significance of the cross of Christ is, he's not just your average Joe saying, I'm a really altruistic guy. I think I'll sacrifice my life for everybody. What? I can't sacrifice my life for your sin. I got my own sin that I have to answer to God for. But because Jesus lived a sinless life, and because he's God in human form, he is in a position to sacrifice his life for you, and me, and you. For all of us. Why? Because he's the one who gave us life. He's the creator God. Is that beginning to make any sense?
Yes, but I have another question, but if you want to ask...
No, go right ahead. Sir, I appreciate it.
So, God in human form, right? Jesus
Yes.
is God.
Right.
That's the thing. So, then, can I just ask, as you said before, when people die, they're essentially put to sleep, right? Like up until judgment, right? Okay. So then, if God doesn't get put to sleep after he's Jesus and just goes back to being, I guess, primarily God instead of God and Jesus, then why exactly would just suffer? Why does the pain of the temporary pain of being Jesus make up for everything else when it's not? Frankly, it's not even remotely within the same universe as the rest of humanity's anything. If anything, it was nothing to him. The pain was nothing to him. He is. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Excellent question. Very hard question. All right. When Jesus was dying on the cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" In other words, Jesus, the second person of the triune God, had spent eternity with his Father. All of a sudden, because God the Father dumped my sin, your sin, the sins of the world on his Son Christ, Christ was separated from his Father, whom he had spent eternity with. And in his cosmic loneliness and alienation, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That is hell. Hell is separation from God. And that is what Jesus went through on the cross. And I don't know for how long after his death, but definitely for some of it. Now, the crux of the answer to your question is, because of who Jesus is, God in human form, he is capable of laying his life down because he's the just judge of the universe, to pay the penalty for your sin and for my sin, for everybody's sin. Okay, what have I not answered? It's a great question you're raising.
Okay. Okay. So then this actually brings up another question.
Yeah.
Second coming, right? Of Jesus, he's going to come back an unknown time in the future to bring us all back to life, right? Everyone that's died, put to sleep, everything, right?
Yeah.
And judge us. So then, where is he now, if not with God?
He is with God.
Oh, he is.
The Father.
Okay.
Jesus is definitely with God the Father.
Okay.
He rose from the dead, ascended to heaven, which is basically another way of saying life in another dimension. Heaven is not 1 million miles out that way or 10 million miles out that way, right? Heaven probably is life in another dimension.
So then he's back with it.
He's with his Father, correct.
Okay. So they're back to being one of the...
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
The Trinity, yes. So then, how does the... any amount of time we could ever possibly comprehend is nothing compared to eternity, right?
Correct.
Zero, nothing, less than nothing, right?
Well, no, not exactly, but
Still.
pretty minuscule.
Compared to infinity,
Right.
any number we have is nothing. So then that would have to mean for a finite amount of time, no matter how long that time was, he was still separated from God for a countable amount of time, right? In some regard, right?
Yes.
Wherever it is,
Yes.
that was he was when it was happening.
That's right.
So then, how exactly is that finite amount of separation from God comparable to the infinite separation from God that everyone else that isn't in accordance with his laws experience? How's that fair?
How's that fair?
How's that fair?
Okay, it's fair because God has given you and all of us great dignity, rational minds, consciences, an innate drive to know God, to study anthropology. Every culture around the world has some type of religion. So we as human beings have this God-shaped vacuum at the center of our being, a God-shaped hole. And we're going to fill it with something. And if we fill it with something other than God, we're choosing to live our life separate from God. And what Christ is saying is, you are so significant, your decisions matter. Because you have a free will, there are consequences to your decisions. Decide carefully, decide wisely. Because the decisions that we make in this life have eternal ramifications. That's the point. The point is not quid pro quo. The point is, God has given you so much dignity, so much responsibility, so many gifts, and He's revealed Himself so clearly that you are responsible in this life to decide where you want to spend eternity.
So then, might I ask further, as you said, He revealed Himself very clearly back then, right?
Today,
How today?
I don't think you have to have too much common sense to realize that there's some type of creator.
Could you give me an example of this?
Sure. You and I come around a bend in the Dakotas, and all of a sudden you and I are looking up at Mount Rushmore. And I turn to you and say, wow, look what the water did. Gosh, that's George Washington up there. Man, oh man, there's Abraham Lincoln next to him. And by golly, if it ain't old Teddy Rough Rider Roosevelt. Isn't it amazing what the water did as it dripped over the rock face? Why is that ridiculous? Why does that contradict common sense? Because water by accident does not carve out the heads of Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt and Jefferson on Mount Rushmore. It takes an artist. It takes a sculptor. It takes an intelligent mind to bring that kind of order and design. Just move from Mount Rushmore to this universe, to your body. There is so much intricate design in your body that for you to say it's ultimately a cosmic accident is you parting company with common sense. It doesn't happen that way, guys. You know that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of, because, I mean, well, if you look at it as everything's a cosmic accident, that it would sound ridiculous if you phrased it like that. However, scientists can and have, like, looked at how the body works, right?
Yes.
Traced it backwards and seen, oh, okay, so it works by all these things that just help it be. They can explain not every single thing just yet, but they're explaining things, as time goes on, as science goes on. So, I mean, they're seeing how these things could have happened from prior circumstances, how they could have formed in accordance with just the world around it.
Sure. Where is the creative mechanism in chemistry? Sir, there is none. Biology and chemistry are tremendous studies of process. That's all it is, guys. There is no biologist who's being honest who's going to say, oh, we know what the creative mechanism is behind the process. And let me give you a hint why your statement, well, we don't know it now, but we're going to know it in the future. Let me tell you why that's wrong. Because the question of God is not a scientific question. It's a philosophical question. And that is why the idea that, oh, science is going to show us that there is no God, and that we just come about by chance, it's impossible. Because the scientific process is a study of process, not a study of the creative mechanism. Because there's no way that you can study the creative mechanism scientifically. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I would call that an astounding argument from ignorance, actually. If I may go back to what you said earlier about God being about the argument from creation, right?
Right.
The second you postulate a creator in this whole thing that is going to create everything from design, that creator would have to come from another creator that has to be at least as complex, and then you're going and getting spun out in this whole entire infinite regress. And that has to stop somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically you're getting to who created God, then who created this God, then who created this God, who created this God. So the second you argue from intelligent design, that intelligent designer has to be the process of an intelligent designer that is at least, if not more complex than that designer.
Really?
And you were talking about mechanisms, right? How there is no mechanism.
No creative mechanism.
No creative mechanism.
Right. You don't create something out of nothing. It doesn't happen.
I agree.
Something comes from something. Something never, ever comes from nothing. Correct.
I agree.
Good. I'm glad we agree.
I agree. Something never comes from nothing. I would absolutely agree.
Good.
It has to come from somewhere. Something doesn't just void out of nothing. So it has to stop somewhere. There has to be some buck-stopping action.
Yep.
But to postulate God
Right.
is to get something from nothing.
Okay. Fair enough. Here's philosophically why I disagree with you. Point one.
Okay.
Everything that has a beginning has a cause.
Okay.
Point two. The universe has a beginning. Point three. Therefore, the universe has a cause.
Fair enough.
That cause is either matter and energy are eternal. The problem with that is, as Albert Einstein found out very harshly, the Big Bang Theory blows that to shreds. The Big Bang Theory shows us before the Big Bang there was nothing. The Bible insists God is eternal. God does not have a beginning. Obviously, Einstein, when he was a pantheist, thought the universe is eternal. The universe doesn't have a beginning. And that's why Einstein used a mathematical lie to try and disprove the Big Bang. But his mathematical friends showed him wrong, and he admitted, guys, I put the fudge factor in there because I don't like the conclusion of the universe is not eternal, because it clearly points to some type of God. And so the universe is not eternal. So then the question is, what makes more sense? What is more reasonable? And I think it's rather clear. An eternal God who has no beginning, which means there is no cause for God. No cause. Why? Because God does not have a beginning. Therefore, God does not need a cause. Remember the first point? Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. But God has no beginning. Therefore, there does not need to be a cause for God. Does that make sense?
That actually does.
Well, thank you.
Now let's say that all that is right, that the universe is eternal and that there is a cause somewhere, right?
No, the universe is not eternal. The Big Bang shows that, right?
Actually, no. The Big
Okay.
Bang is just a label that physicists put on something because they don't know what happened beforehand. So that's kind of a misleading label. We don't know what came before the Big Bang. All we know is that there was this explosion that came from somewhere. No one knows what came before that. To say I don't know is not to say, oh, this did not happen.
Right.
So let's grant that you're right, that everything you just said was right.
Okay.
That, and I've heard you referencing, your arguments sound very familiar to Aristotle, actually. That there is some Aristotelian prime mover up here, right? That is the source of all motion, the cause of all motion, the uncaused cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not synonymous to an omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, eternal God. And Aristotle, if he were alive, would tell you that himself.
Yeah. Obviously, Aristotle and I disagree.
All right, well, there's one thing to disagree, and then there's one thing to arrive at a conclusion that actually reflects reality.
Yeah.
So the reason we're having this conversation, the reason why we're all here, someone is right and someone is wrong.
That's exactly right.
I'm
Very
not
good.
saying I'm right.
Yes, you are. You
Nope.
started with some pretty strong statements when you started about me.
I did.
Okay, thank you for acknowledging that. So let's not act like you're just an innocent passerby who thought, wow, this is interesting. No, you've got an opinion, and I respect that. And you disagree with me, and I respect that. That's just fine, okay? But let's not deceive each other by saying, oh, no, we really don't disagree. No, we do disagree.
All right, fine.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you on everything. I'm saying it very well could be the case that there's some Aristotelian prime mover up there causing everything. I don't know that for sure.
Right.
Because I don't know the cause of the universe. I'm not pretending to know here. You're the
Right.
one who's pretending to know here, to know everything. That's why you're here, am I right?
No, I do not know everything. I repeatedly say, I do not know. I do not know everything.
Okay, whatever. I would say that even if there is some Aristotelian prime mover up in the sky, we cannot ascribe to it the moral qualities that we ascribe to God.
Okay. Now let me tell you why I think it's more reasonable to believe that there's a personal God than to believe that there's an impersonal God. Real simple. It's not
Okay.
going to take too much work on your part, guys. Is it more reasonable to believe the personal comes from the non-personal, or is it more reasonable to believe the personal comes from the personal? Guys, 100 times out of 100, a personal human being comes from a personal human being. You never get the personal coming from the non-personal. You never get love out of a rock. You never get free will out of a statue. You get a rational mind from a rational mind. You get a personal being from a personal being. You get the ability to love because you're a human being with a physical mom and dad who have the ability to love. God brought you into this world with this incredible ability to love. So, if there is just an impersonal prime mover, my problem with that is, I'm sorry, too much of my life is all about the personal. The personal does not come from the impersonal. You don't get the personal out of cement, out of a rock. You don't even get the personal out of a tree. You get a personal from a personal being. And that is part of why I'm convinced the Bible is totally reliable when it talks about God is love. God is a personal being who loves you and who wants to live in relationship with you. Does that make sense?
Why don't you jump in here, man? I kind of had it.
Okay.
I'll just start out by saying that really begs the very question of what we're talking about. It begs the whole entire question of God's existence. You're basically saying, I think God exists, therefore he exists. And that's really all I'm going to say.
You've done a horrible job listening to me, sir. You have not listened.
That's just your opinion.
That's reality, man. I didn't just say I believe God exists because I believe. I said these are the reasons I believe God exists. Now, come on, man. It's not easy for me to speak hours and hours out here. Please listen and don't attack a straw man. Come on, I respect you, you respect me, and let's have an honest intellectual discourse. That's what I thought we were at university for. I do not believe because I believe. That's idiocy. That's being irrational. I believe because of evidence. I believe God exists because there's overwhelming evidence. I believe in Jesus Christ because there's overwhelming evidence that he is reliable. I do not believe because I believe. That's lunacy. Yes, sir.
About the impersonal personal thing, right?
Yes.
Like what you were talking about a second ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see why you would think, okay, so I feel these things, therefore I feel it because of God. God is love, I feel love, therefore, boom, right?
Yeah, one of my pieces of evidence that God exists is my experience and my ability to love.
Okay.
Because if there is no God, love is a chemical reaction. Because if there is no God, you're limiting reality to matter and energy. And you don't get love, a free will, out of matter and energy. This cement, the inanimate, has no ability to love. Right? I mean, is that clear, guys, or am I talking gibberish? Do you go out on a date with a rock? Do you go out on a date with a tree? No. You go out on a date with a human being who's a personal being with a rational mind, a free will, the ability to love or not love. Right?
Right.
Okay.
But, I mean, wouldn't it also make sense that the way we feel things and the reason we feel things is also just beneficial for life? It helps us continue to live, right? if people didn't feel the need, it's a need to be near each other, right? To seek out other people, to form groups, to form societies, all that stuff, right? To continue their life and the lives of others, then we wouldn't have any need to. If that didn't help us live, we wouldn't feel it. It would serve no purpose.
Okay.
So then, doesn't it just make sense that why we feel things and the way we feel them is just a product of, necessity for life, which is, evolution?
Hey, it's possible that what you're saying is true. The reason I can't buy it is because although I might love him because we're both occupants of planet Earth and we both want to survive, I am convinced that there is more to my relationships with certain people than simply, we want to survive, so let's coexist. I am convinced that people have sacrificed for me. They have given out of their backside for me. I didn't deserve it. I didn't earn it. They purely loved me. And guess what? That is such an important part of my experience in life that for any atheist to tell me, oh, that's just part of the evolutionary cycle, that's just people's chemicals going off a certain way, is such a crock, it's incredible. And I can promise you, the guy who tells me that the reason that racism is wrong is because we just got to coexist so we can evolve higher. That's also a crock. I am convinced that racism is wrong because every human being is created in the image of God, given an innate dignity that comes from God, which means racism is wrong, not because I'm part of Black Lives Matter. Racism is wrong, not because I'm a white intellectual elitist. Racism is wrong because God created every single human being in his image. And to denigrate a human being because of a different ethnic heritage is sin. It's evil. And God will judge us for it. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
See, that's my experience.
Yep.
And so that's why I was so offended by this guy, or your buddy, or whoever he is. You don't know, yeah. Well, when he says, you just believe because you believe. That is such a lie, it's incredible. I believe because of evidence. And if there's no evidence, I'm not going to believe. I believe because of experience. I experience life. I experience love. I experience meaning in life. I experience free will. In fact, I've experienced free will so much that if you smack him in the face, I'm going to look you in the face and say, that was wrong. You should not have done that.
Thank you for joining us for these few minutes. We'd like to personally invite you Sunday mornings to St. Paul's Episcopal Church, located in Darien at 9 a.m., or to Grace Farms at 10 a.m. in New Canaan, Connecticut. Check us out more online at www.gracecommunity.info to learn more.